Good morning. Welcome, welcome. All right, I'm going to give everybody till 8:01 to just like jump on the call, and then we will get started. Good morning, welcome. All right, it is 8:01, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Hello, my name is Kathleen Frank. I teach 11th grade AP Lang at GVR. My presentation is not going to be particularly professional because that's not my personality. And I just did a pear deck because that is what I'm used to. I didn't make a participants guide or anything because I didn't totally see the point of one, but I just shared all of the slides so that you can go back to anything we talk about here later. So we're gonna just hopefully have a good discussion and get some great ideas around creating really strong class discussions in this unique year. So if we could take 1 minute on the icebreaker, when have text discussions gone well versus when have they been an absolute disaster? And then after 1 minute, I would love to hear a couple of share outs. All right, and I would love to have at least 3 share outs. And if you don't like sharing out, maybe you could write something in the chat. What has gone well and what has gone terrible? Any hands? Yeah, go ahead if your hand is up. Thank you, Dean.
I guess just to think about it quite simply, I feel like they've gone well when the kids are into the topic.
Yeah.
And they're excited about it. They've been quite flat when the kids are not so jazzed about whatever it is we're talking about.
Can you give examples of something they were really into?
Sure. So, I mean, the first thing that pops in my head, not that this is what I would love to be using as an example, is like sometimes we'll play around with, like different language patterns and functions, and we'll use like a non-content example. So like, what's better, Fortnite or like whatever, or something else not video game related has generally, and kids are like, oh yeah. First, like, what kind of a leader was Caesar Augustus? And they're like, I mean, I guess he was all right. So
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Nomi?
Yes, hi. I think text discussions, at least in like our spaces, have gone fairly well when the questions are open-ended. Like one that was really successful at in our grade level was around like, was the ending of the book a happy one or like a not happy one? And that one like really pushed students to think critically, and like either answer is correct. And I think when kids know that like there's no right answer, it really pushes them to like engage deeper in the discussion. That's been successful for us.
So they had to tease out something complex there. And Shields, did you want to share?
Sure. I was going to put my hand down, but I used to teach 7th grade, and what really made a rich discussion is when I had the kids do a lot of pre-writing on it, where they answered questions in writing first, where they had discussion cards on the table, when they knew what to do with themselves when others were speaking. So just like really deliberate planning and preparation for what the students' hands and brains and mouths need to be doing at any given point was really important.
Yeah. Can you say what is a discussion card?
Oh, sorry. Just stems that help them either respond to another student or verbally make an assertion that just like help. They're essentially sentence starters.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for jumping in, and I see a lot of really great ideas in the chat also. So that's what we are going to be kind of talking about, brainstorming together, and I'm going to give some examples of things that are going well in my class around discussions. Just to introduce myself, I'm Kathleen Frank. I am older than the hills. My first year with DSST was the 08-09 school year. This is my 18th consecutive year of teaching high school English. So I obviously, like, over that many years, like, you've kind of tried everything in terms of class discussion. So I feel like I've learned just a ton through trial and error and what works and what doesn't. Just here to talk about some of those things. Yeah, when I moved to Denver, I got a 2-bedroom apartment on Colorado Boulevard for $665 a month. So that is how fucking long I have been around. That's who I am. I still teach full-time at GBR. So our session goals are just to like identify how we can plan in a rigorous structured discussion and aimed at deeper comprehension of the text. So not just discussing for the sake of discussing, but something that will drive students' reading comprehension in a meaningful way. So as I said, I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. Everything I do is easy and low lift. I'm not going to be asking you to do any shit that takes a lot of logistical planning, anything like that. It's got to be like easy to execute. That drives deeper and more nuanced reading comprehension for students, that they would get a lot of at-bats to verbally process their reading, ask questions, and push each other. And then just something that is pro-reading and pro-social. This was a big focus for me after last year, which I'll talk about more, but I was just like really kind of still reeling from the awkwardness of lack of participation in my online classes, and I wanted to really address it head on in this back to in-person school year. So those are the goals of this session. Okay, so we know, just to like lay the groundwork, I attached one meta-analysis and one just study, that especially for middle and high school students, discussing reading is a very valuable driver of reading comprehension, especially in terms of inferencing, connecting details to main idea, and those sort of more nuanced thinking skills. So you can read the data if you don't believe me, but just take it as fact that this is something that's like very important in humanities classrooms, English, and history. Okay, so let's think about discussion pitfalls of my past, and obviously have a million years of in-person teaching behind me, but these were especially bad during e-school. In terms of whole class Socratic seminars, I would sometimes have either in e-school, and I'll show you an example in a second, or in class, like that they would come prepared for the seminar, but essentially what they would have done is just like written a 30-second blurb that they sit there waiting to say out loud to get the points. And they're not listening to anything. They're not like coming up with new ideas on the text while they're sitting there, but they're waiting their turn. I think that I, in the past, didn't have great expectations for note taking during the whole class Socratic seminar. So people just like sat there staring into the middle distance, watching movies in their minds. And they were just like waiting. It was like almost like a series of speeches, which is not necessarily terrible, but it's not driving reading comprehension the way I wanted them to. And this is also like, there's something about the whole class Socratic seminar share out that is very anxiety inducing for some students. They just like freak out at the thought of it. And it seems like high stakes in a way that can make them nervous. I tried last year online breakout rooms, and it was terrible. Like, it was just that feeling of like being in middle school and like going to a party and opening the door and like nothing's going on, and you're like, is this the party? Like, I would like go into a room and it was just like black, no one's talking. I'd be like, are you guys doing the thing? And then no one would say anything. You know, one kid would be like, hey miss, we already did it. And I was like, that's weird, because it was 30 seconds ago. It just didn't work at all. And then I think in previous classes, sometimes my turn in talks, people would just like read what they wrote, and they'd be like, I said this, blah, I said this, blah. And then they would just be, so they didn't necessarily get anything out of the speaking. They just technically spoke. So those are some pitfalls I have bumped into. Any thoughts on these? Have you had similar issues? Have you done things in these types of discussions that have worked better? Go ahead.
It's Denise, yeah.
Denise, sorry.
Instead of doing breakout rooms, I would create groups, and in the group name, I would have the kids come up with a group name, but at first it would be like yellow, green, purple, whatever. And I would assign, like, for example, this was last year and I was just teaching writing, and we would have like an article they'd have to read, and I would assign like each person like, okay, you have to find the main idea, and you have to find this, and you have to find that. And then as a group, you guys have to come up with a sentence that kind of synthesizes a quick summary of it. And then another person had to be the one to present it to the class, and I would assign the roles. And then as the students became really familiar, because we would do the same thing every Friday with a different article, I would start to kind of slowly, gradually allow them to decide who was going to do what. And then it turned into a whole paragraph summary rather than a sentence as they got more used to it. And this was with 6th grade, and it really worked out well, especially because I did a lot of, like, I know it sounds like redundant, but I did a lot of the same activity with different stuff. And it really helped because it was like, okay, this is the routine and the expectation. It's not like a brand new thing every time we go into these groups. And then I would start calls in each group, and then just come around and into the groups and kind of, check on them. I was also working in a state where it was hybrid all year. So I was able to assign kids in the class to be in groups with kids at home, because we didn't use the OWL. And it really helped build that community with them. And it made the kids at home feel like they were working with the kids in the classroom and that they were a part of that community. So it really helped to do it separately like that, rather than breakout groups, because it wasn't randomized either.
I love that they like needed each other for something. So there was like investment in that, working collaboratively. Okay, so this is like as good as it got last year. This is one of my my online Socratic seminars. I can show you guys the readings and then the prep sheet if you want to look at that. And let's just think about like what are the strengths and limitations. We'll just watch it for a couple minutes. This is before anyone had gone back to school.
In accepting this position, they're not only allowing the oppression, but they're even being complicit in it, because they're not like standing up. And it allows oppression, and like having a Black consciousness allows oppression to be fought by empowering people and not allowing oppression to kill them mentally or spiritually.
Okay, so like adding on to like what everyone said, pretty much, I kind of just want to connect it all. It says like Black consciousness, like is it's important to get the idea in people that, like Black people, that hold on, let me remember my words. Oh, that they are not inferior because of the color of their skin, something that they were born with that they physically cannot change. And this from this quote I got from, I think, day one, it says, Black consciousness sought to awaken in us the sense of our infinite value and worth in the sight of God, so that our worth is intrinsic to who we are and not dependent on biological relevancies such as ethnicity, skin, color, or race. And from this, I got, like, you need Black consciousness, like, to show that you're not inferior. Get the idea in your head, you're not inferior just because you're Black. Like, white people aren't better than you, and any, like, just because they're white and just because they're something that they were born with. And overall, like, that idea of not being inferior is needed to fight against apartheid and fight against that oppression that they've been going through.
I completely agree with Nana and Nicole, how they were talking about how, like, they kind of saw the white, like, how white standards, and, like, by breaking, like, those standards, like, they kind of, like, made their mind stronger to be able to, like, fight against that oppression that they had and, like, that they were facing.
Okay. So what are
I guess kind of adding on to everyone, I would.
we can skip one. What are the strengths or limitations of a whole class seminar like that, either online or in person? Any thoughts? Go ahead, Danica.
Hi. Just thinking about the amount of kids who are like participating at a time. It's probably, especially online, hard to tell what everybody else is doing while one kid is sharing out. So in a whole class, there's like one person sharing at a time. So just less participation as a limitation. However, I felt like the kids were responding really quickly to each other, which was compared to what I experienced at eSchool, really great. Less of that wait time.
Any other thoughts on that? I mean, I think at the time I was happy because they were at least into the material, and people, it felt more like a class, which by December was something that I was like really missing. But I do think that in terms of, if someone went into that seminar with kind of a shaky idea of Steve Biko's like key points and how they relate to the world, I'm not sure that they would necessarily get themselves like deeper into the text. I think it was just like kids who already understood one part of it, like saying the part that they understood. Okay. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about this over the summer and just like how to come back from last year. And I had a bunch of goals with just discussions and participation in class. I wanted people to be expected to like speak on the material multiple times per class, that you would just like walk into the room knowing that that was going to happen and that it was okay. And that I wanted them to see discussion as inherently valuable for their textual understanding. I think part of the issue with what you just saw is that I set very clear like participation points, expectations, and I think the kids were like talking to get their points, as opposed to like, I'm going to do something with this text. It's important for me to understand that on a deep level. Like, let me talk to you so that I understand this better, which is more the way I approached like studying for things in college when I was reading something dense that I didn't quite get yet. I wanted like frequent class discussions to drive reading growth, and then just like break ourselves out of the eSchool participation paralysis. Maybe with our younger students or middle schoolers, it wasn't so bad, but with 10th graders, it was like pulling teeth. So I was like, let's get back into it. We're back at school. So those were my goals. Okay, So I'm going to share now just like what I've been doing lately, because I think that it has worked well for me, and that it is something people could take and modify for a lot of different classes, both for like composition, where you're specifically looking at writer's moves, or for history, where you're looking at primary source documents. So guiding principles, one, I think that like the text has to be challenging enough to warrant discussion. Like if everybody kind of gets it the first read through, there's no point in discussing anything. So I have tried to teach things that are extremely dense, and that they would need to really like break it down together to understand all of the ideas. That it's itself a skill that has to be explicitly taught and practiced. This is a different type of talking than, you know, social talking with your family and friends. And so we're going to work on it explicitly as a skill. And so that that we are assessing for a deep comprehension, mastery of the text in some way, that they are using what they talked about to do well on. Does that make sense? They're like, feel the connection between having hashed out the text and then doing well on the assessment of how well they understood it. That's a scaffold that builds towards mastery, which is especially effective for people who need additional scaffolds in their reading comprehension. And these ones are kind of the same. I didn't set this up that great, but that they can use their talking in some way that like they see as valuable individually to them, either on the mastery check or essay or something like that. Okay. So here's the basic idea. I've set my class up in tables of 4 to 6 kids, heterogeneously grouped by ability level. And then I teach 11th grade. So I've been choosing for our like discussion texts, ones that are like you would typically encounter in college. So complex, challenging texts that even your top readers would say, like, there's a lot in here we need to talk about. So I linked to 3 of those, a couple of which you'll see them discussing on the videos I'm going to show. So before I did this, and I think it was Denise who emphasized that they really like practiced it and went over all the skills individually, and that led to a good discussion. I did this too. We modeled it quite a bit when we were rolling it out at the beginning of the year. We fishbowled it. I was like hustling for engagement, so I participated in the fishbowl in the persona of my high school self, which students found like hilarious because I used like Northern California white girl slang. And I was like, I'm hella nervous. Like, I totally don't get it. And then everybody like watched and took notes on what they were doing strong in the annotation. I especially emphasize, like, if there's someone in your group who's not talking, how can you like gently and welcomingly reactivate that person so that they do begin participating in the discussion? How do you politely and appropriately push someone who had a misunderstanding of the text? So we like modeled all that and talked about it a lot. So the general routine is like this. I give them something they are reading. They start by annotating in pencil, blue, or black pen. So what they're annotating for depends on the standard. A lot of times in my class, they annotate for claims and evidence. Sometimes they annotate for structures like modes of development, how they're defending their argument, things like that. So they are annotating independently, reading independently for the first like little block, 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll give them like 4 paragraphs to read and annotate. So then what they do is they switch to a red pen or a different color pen. They get in their groups and they go paragraph by paragraph and section by section. And they go around the group and everybody shares out their annotations and their interpretations of the text. And so everybody has to add 1 annotation in the new color of pen. And then at the end of class, I give them some kind of an assessment that really pushes that they deeply understood what they were reading. And the next day, I usually include a slide where I come back to how did we do on the discussion? What did I see? How can we improve this today, especially if we're discussing again? So this makes it really easy for me to see that they are adding to their annotations. And they like essentially read it twice, once individually and once together. Questions about any of this? I'm going to show examples of everything here in a second. Okay. All right. So this is like, it's really simple. This is my slide for like the first time annotation. I believe this is when we were reading, yeah, A Talk to Teachers by James Baldwin. And this is my slide for group annotations. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to just show some videos of kids doing this in class so you kind of just like get the vibe. It is nothing fancy. We all have that student who doesn't ever wear their mask right? Here's mine.
Protect you. And basically what she's saying is that she's telling the audience to speak up because like even if you're silent, that's not gonna protect you from death. As that didn't protect her from her almost dying. So she said she's basically trying to like persuade them to like speak up and use your voice. I had the same thing underlined. I said regardless of your silence or you speak up, in the end you'll die either way. So why hold in a piece of you that's like that could be free and also help others like be free too.
Like this is a really quick one, but I like it because someone corrected someone else on vocabulary.
That not speaking about an important issue makes the problem bigger and harder to resolve, and that issue will target you more harshly. And I said, using your voice to communicate with others is regretted, not regarded. Oh, I did say that. And you said what?
And last one. Just you guys kind of get what it's like kind of noisy in there. People are just talking in their tables.
Still reflecting at the thought that mortality might be close, she started to begin to think that she's not going to be here for that long, but she's going to, like, it's like, I don't have this much time left, and I should use what time to start, like, advocating or fighting for what I believe in. There was a point where it's like I had ever spoken what needed to be said or had only betrayed myself into small silences where I planned to engage to speak or waited for somebody else's words. And I feel like she's just trying to say like you can't wait around for like somebody to like say something for you or like get what you want. And I feel like she's saying that you have to like take initiative for yourself.
Okay, so I am not a professional videographer. Oops. Okay, so thoughts on how do you see evidence of like teacher facilitation? How would this be effective for reading comprehension or other like any other thoughts about that? Let's just take a couple minutes, either raise your hand or share in the chat. So I think that this would work like fairly well across a wide variety of classes. I mean, if I were a comp teacher, I would probably be having them do this with like the model text of a certain genre they were beginning to write and like looking for author's moves, or a particularly challenging like primary source document if I was a history teacher. Okay, so it's 8:30, we have 20 more minutes. Let's just take 15 minutes. I know that everybody's probably thinking a lot right now about the unit you'll be teaching when you get back from break in next week. So if you want to pull that up, do you think that building in some kind of structured discussion protocol would drive your students deeper towards mastery in the unit that is coming? Happens all the time in e-school. Part of the reasons it was terrible. So just look at those lesson plans. Think about how you can possibly build that in. I think that Denise was right in that like it gets better and better if it's like a part of a routine. And then let's come back together at 8:45 just for some closure. Yeah, I am here to answer questions, but you can go ahead and go camera off if you just want to look through your lesson plans and think about it. All right. So just in the last 5 minutes, let's either, if you would prefer to just talk and not write, go ahead and raise your hand. But if you prefer to share in the chat, please share in the chat. What are you thinking in terms of class discussions in Try 2? Do you need any supports? Do you have any questions? I would just love to hear what everybody is thinking about implementing as we move into the second third of the year. So hands if you'd like to talk, or you could just share in the chat and then we will all sign off. How about at 8:49? Go ahead, Shields, please.
You can call me PJ. I see you avoiding my first name, and I don't blame you. I go by PJ, though.
I just feel like such an asshole when I mispronounce people's names.
Oh, no, that's fine. I really should get the display name changed. I don't know if they can. Anyway, this is only my second year teaching high school comp, and so my first year was totally online. And I'm sure you know that that was a nightmare. So we're doing our introduction to rhetoric unit after break, and I'm really looking forward to having the kiddos get into small group discussions, because I offer 3 different articles for analysis, and like giving them an at-bat discussing the different rhetorical appeals and tools that they're seeing in that. I think will help go a long way to our final, which is rhetorical analysis. And so like giving them the at-bats, actually talking about that and hearing other kids analyze these readings is going to help a lot. I'm excited about it.
Awesome. I'm going to send you my like intro to rhetoric materials and all the keep sheets I give the kids in AP. I bet it would be just like helpful for that unit.
I will take them. Thank you.
Who else? It is fine to just share in the chat if you would prefer. All right, so it is 8:49. I want to honor everybody's time. I hope that you got some ideas, and let's get these kids talking about texts in Try 2. I appreciate everybody's time and attention this morning, and thank you very much. Please never hesitate to reach out. As I said, I've been doing this forever, so I have materials for basically everything, and I'm always happy to share. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and a great trimester too. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Welcome.